Hello, all. I am William S. Jagetz, founding principal with Family Financial Management Practice. We are a wealth management firm working in the areas of estate planning and tax planning. Here, we talk about legacy planning for art collectors and artists. The last two videos, we talked about setting up a trust and holding your art collection in trust, and why that's a good idea. If you haven't seen those, go back, check them out. They're pretty good. So today we're going to talk about trust one more time. This is just kind of a wrap up, and then we'll move on to other things. So, just to clarify, a trust is an entity that you create to replace yourself when you die, and that way you don't have to go through probate with a will. A trust has a grantor, that is the person setting it up, that's you. A trust has a trustee, that is the person uh, responsible for managing the trust as you would if you if you were alive. So that's essentially your replacement person. And then the beneficiary is the entity person uh, that will benefit from the proceeds of the trust, assuming there are proceeds. Now, what we talked about specifically was a revocable living trust. With a revocable living trust, you, the grantor, the person setting this up, are all of those things. You are the grantor, you are the trustee, and you are ultimately the beneficiary until you die, at which point the people that you've delineated, your trustee, your beneficiaries, immediately kick in. And the trustee will manage, the beneficiaries will benefit. And again, unlike a will, there's no probate, nobody fights it. So, the most important thing there, everything's important. You don't want to make mistakes because you're going to be dead, so you can't fix any of this then. So, everything's important. But it's very important to make sure the instructions are clear, concise, broad enough to allow your trustee to do his work, his or her work, uh, not too broad that they can do whatever they want, and just really take the time out to a section with the instructions where you're telling the trustee, the world basically, how you want these assets managed and how you want to move about in the world post your demise. Uh, Spend some time on that. It's important, and spend some time with your trustee discussing that. Trustee can be an individual or an entity. Beneficiary can also be an individual or an entity. So, moving forward, if there's any questions about that, you can put them in the comments, and I'll address them as best I can. So, our trusts, uh, our revocable living trusts specifically, because that's what we're talking about. Our revocable living trusts good for asset protection and or tax planning? And the short answer is no, they are not. While you're alive, you, if there's any growth on the assets, taxable capital gains on the assets in the trust, then yeah, you're responsible for those. If there's any liability, then you're responsible for that. So if there's any debt, foreclosure, lawsuit, and those assets, because they're in the trust, doesn't mean they're safe from creditors, predators, etc. The reason for that is the fact that you retain full control of the assets in the trust and the managing of everything that the trust does while you're alive. So that is why it's a revocable living trust, the title. That's why it's a good thing for managing assets, for managing assets, managing your legacy, not to protect the assets. But you can make the changes anytime you want. Trustee, change your mind. Beneficiary, change your mind. Add assets to the trust. Take assets out of the trust. Scratch the whole thing. You can, decide you don't want to trust and get rid of it. So because you retain that control, you cannot convince the Department of the Treasury or uh, some judge that, sorry, these aren't mine. I can't give them to you. You retain control, so you're liable and you have to pay taxes. That's, that's the facts, short and clear. But if you need that kind of protection, if you are a high liability type person, lawyer, doctor, CEO, who's on CNBC, sometimes people see it. Some people just draw liability. There are predatory lawyers who just look for people to sue. And if you're one of those people, then you might need asset protection. And there's ways to do that too. You you can hold all those assets in an LLC or a corporation, and then the trust can manage the LLC. So you can put the company, the business, it's an asset, into the trust. It's an extra step. It's for, I don't know, 90% of the people in the world. It's probably unnecessary. But again, if you have liability concerns, then that's a way to do it. And professionals, your professional counsel can help you set that up if need be. So now, this is a revocable living trust, and I just want to clarify it becomes irrevocable when you die. So you can do whatever you want while you're alive. But when you die, wherever it is, it's locked in. The trustee cannot change it. Uh, the beneficiaries cannot change it. The instructions, the beneficiaries can't choose a new trustee. The trustee can't decide that he or she or it or they don't like the beneficiaries and change it. It becomes irrevocable upon the death of the grantor, at which point all those protections do kick in. Now, if you are a beneficiary and the trust is paying you, then the money that comes out of the trust to pay you is taxable income. So keep that in mind when you set this up. You will be setting up taxable income for your beneficiaries. You can put in the instructions things like don't pay them if it's going to mess up their Medicaid, or don't pay them if they have uh, lawsuits or liens or judgments pending against them, because you don't want to take money out of the trust, give it to Junior, and Junior immediately has to hand it over to creditors. They can't get it while it's in the trust, because it's not his. So if they have beef with him, financial beef, then once it's in his hands, they can take it, his or her hands. So put that in the instructions. Again, the instructions are important. Pay out the beneficiaries unless there's judgments against them. Pay out the beneficiaries unless it's gonna, like I said, mess up their Medicaid or something. And that goes in the instructions. And then the trustee would withhold so that the money doesn't do harm instead of good, and it doesn't get snatched up for predators or whatever. Uh, so just to review, Revocable Living Trust is for legacy planning. It's not for tax planning. It's not for asset protection. The fact that it's called a revocable living trust means there is also something called an irrevocable living trust. It's not. Irrevocable trusts are pretty special and specific. You don't need those. Most of the people I'm talking to don't need that. Your revocable trust will become irrevocable uh, when it's time for it to do so. And, it's just a great tool for making sure that your art collection, uh, does what you want it to do post your demise. So, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today. Uh, the next one we're going to do is going to speak specifically to artists. I'm going to spend some time, maybe a video, maybe two videos, or at least one video, maybe two videos, maybe three, talking to artists. So, if you know an artist, if you love an artist, then have you first you subscribe, please do that, and then share this so they can subscribe and hit the alert button so you'll know when it's coming up and you don't miss any of the content. And yeah, so subscribe, share, like. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, and we'll talk again soon. Be safe.